Please remain seated. The show will begin in 3, 2...
Like a Hellcat.
My name is Ethan, and I'm 15 years old. I always loved going trick-or-treating with my older cousins in the big city where we lived. One Hallows Eve when I was 9, I was grounded because I had gotten into a fight at school due to anger management problems, and I wasn't allowed to do anything except remain in my room and go to bed early. My babysitter Dory was often drunk and neglected me, and she'd always leave the house to go off and do things with her friends. I was by myself frequently. I could stay up as late as I wanted, and my parents wouldn't be home until 3 or 4 in the morning because of their long business trips, where they would normally be out of town attending conferences with their employer. I was a bratty kid then, and me getting into trouble was a common occurrence. I always got what I wanted because I was spoiled, and when I didn't have it my way, I always had a trick or two up my sleeve. This particular night in 2000, Dory was 17 at the time, and she had left the house at 8 o'clock, and it was a cold night in December where in the area roads were icy, and it wasn't heavily crowded with children. There were some dressed in costumes, and they were carrying large bags of candy, and none of them were with adults. It was a run-down neighborhood with all sorts of weird and sketchy people who lived on the same block as me. I remember hearing Dory's car pull out of the driveway, and as soon as she had left, I had gotten dressed in my bandit costume and walked out the front door. For 3 hours, I had gone from one house to the next, filling up 2 large bags with candy, and eventually, when all the lights went out and Halloween was over with, I made my way home. My house was just half a mile from where I'd been, and I always took the route through the woods. This is where I made the dumbest decision that to this day, looking back on it, I deeply regret it. There was this old man who owned a huge pumpkin patch right by the woods, and typically on the route home, I always passed his place. The old man was a bit of a recluse, but always had his property decked out with creepy decorations every year. There was this particular prop that was strung up on a wooden pole in the center of the pumpkin patch. It was a scarecrow, and it was not the stereotypical type with a painted, cheesy, crooked grin with button eyes and cheap overalls. It looked evil. It had a rotting, moldy jack-o'-lantern face with horns sprouting from its head without the straw hat, and the clothing it wore was a torn white t-shirt and blue jeans. Its pumpkin flesh was comprised of big red blisters all over its body from head to toe, and the claws on this thing were massive, each of its nails black-colored and about a foot long. Its feet resembled ones that belonged to a crow. I was reluctant to approach the mammoth monstrosity at first, but I normally wasn't the scaredy cat that just simply ran from anything. While the thing looked pretty legit freaky, I was trying to convince myself that despite its opposing height and twisted appearance, it was just a handmade prop, and that's all it was. Every Halloween night, I would smash this old guy's crops out of spite, because I was just that terrible kid, and for the fun of it, I used to even toilet paper or egg his house. I'd also steal things of value that weren't nailed down. I was never caught. The old man was rumored to dabble in witchcraft, and he was even known as the town snitch. He's the very reason why I was even grounded from going trick-or-treating, because he was the only witness who saw me beat the crap out of that other kid who always taunted me and harassed me whenever I took the bus home from school. At the moment, I decided it was time for some payback. After smashing every single pumpkin, I even took an axe and cut off the head of the scarecrow, which then toppled over on its side after cutting down its wooden pole. I wasted no time and hightailing it back to my house. At around 11 p.m., I watched a scary movie downstairs in the living room, pigging out on Hershey's chocolate and cans of Mountain Dew, before heading into the kitchen to cook another bag of popcorn. I had forgotten to lock all the doors and windows, which was a routine thing in our neighborhood because of the numerous reports of break-ins. Then come midnight, at this point I had dozed off with the TV still on, and the living room was a mess. I was woken up by the sound of light tapping on the living room window, which was located right by the front door, on the far left side of the room. I turned on the television to listen as the tapping got louder and louder. The curtains were drawn shut. I was reluctant to move, but I assumed it was just a tree branch hitting against the window, so I ignored it. Then the tapping traveled to the front door and then turned into aggressive, loud banging. Maybe it was Dory, I thought. This was not unusual because she often came back drunk off her ass and always lost her spare keys. However, since the front door was unlocked, she should have been able to enter. But sometimes she was very tipsy, and I had to be the one to carry her upstairs to the guest room so she could sleep and sober up. But as soon as I reached the doorknob to open the door, a part of me said to lock the door. I don't know why, but I'm glad I did. This time I made sure to lock all the doors and windows before returning to the couch. Before I could sit back down, I heard howling and snarling coming from the other side of the front door, then scratching noises and then heavy footsteps which crunched in the winter snow. Each step was big and thunderous, causing the ground to shake. I was scared, and I shut off all the lights after securing the house. The ground shook so much that pots, pans, dishes all flew off the shelves and crashed to the wood floor. Some framed pictures were now crooked. The temperature dropped in the house. It was freezing in that room. I raced upstairs to my room and barricaded my door. I then hid under my bed. I then tightly clutched my flashlight. A few minutes passed and I heard glass shattering and the splintering of wood. The front door downstairs came tumbling down and the footsteps stomped their way up the stairs, then stopping at my bedroom door. Whatever it was on the other side of the door started calling my name. It said in an eerie, disembodied voice. It then continued.
What you did was very bad. Let me in. I just want to play.
I felt sick to my stomach, and my blood ran cold as the scratching and banging noises went on. The thing kept saying my name, and what it said next still haunts me.
Dory was just like you. Very naive and foolish to wander alone after dark. She was very rude, but she tasted delicious. But I'm still very, very hungry.
I wanted to throw up. I shut my eyes and cradled up into a ball. Then came a loud thump against the door. It took all the courage I could muster to get out from underneath the bed, and I listened again for more noise from the creature. Nothing. I remember climbing out of my bedroom window and running across the street to Miss Gretchen's house. She was a middle-aged woman that worked as a nurse, and she had exited her car when I approached her. I frantically told her what happened, and she didn't believe me at first, but I begged her to call the cops, and she did. When the cops came, they came upon a grisly scene upstairs. Hanging by a barbed wire was my babysitter Dory, who was gutted and her throat was slit, badly bruised and bloody. She was missing her right leg and right arm. Her head was badly chewed up, her brains exposed. I saw all of this at just 9 years old, and I also saw her face was carved like a pumpkin. Her eyes were hollowed out, and her tongue was also missing. I screamed and fainted. Ever since that night, for the past 7 years, I stopped going trick-or-treating and didn't celebrate Halloween anymore. I never told my parents about my experience, because I still fear that they would not take me seriously. I have gotten my act together since, and I'm pursuing a career path in music. Every once in a while, When I pass by the ruins of the old man's house and where there used to be a pumpkin patch, I still think about that grotesque beast, that scarecrow, and it's what keeps me awake at night. Lately, there has been more break-ins and over 30 homicidal cases, some of them pertaining to small children and teenagers, and they were all found the same way as Dory, my babysitter. And I feel guilty still because this monster is out there, responsible for all these deaths. And who do I tell? Who would believe me? I know writing this you think I'm nuts, and I really don't care what you think of me. All I know is this is my fault, and I don't know how to make it stop. I have nightmares every night and they won't go away. When I turn 18, I'm moving out of state and attending university elsewhere. And if you're smart, you won't pull the same dumb shit that I did. Stay home on Halloween night. Otherwise, if you aren't careful, you might get more than just a few tricks and a few treats.